Revenge with Karen.
The conference room smelled like stale stumptown coffee and nervous sweat, a specific olfactory blend that usually preceded a disaster in the Seattle tech scene. I sat at the head of the mahogany table, my hands resting flat on the cool surface of my MacBook Pro. I wasn't nervous. Nervousness is a reaction to uncertainty, and I was never uncertain about my code. I was the lead backend engineer at Streamline, startup that had spent the last 5 years trying to disrupt the logistics supply chain. And for 5 years, I was the one who made sure the disruption actually happened instead of just timing out. Standing at the whiteboard was Brad. Brad was the founder's son, a 27-year-old with a shiny MBA, a smile that looked like it was purchased from a catalog, and a brand new title, Chief Technology Officer. He had held the position for exactly 4 days. Those 4 days, he had managed to use the words synergy, paradigm, and blockchain in a single sentence, which I'm pretty sure is a felony in at least 3 jurisdictions. Kayla, Brad said, pointing a laser pointer at my projection. The red dot wavered on the screen, dancing over the architecture diagram of the Node 7 optimization module I had spent the last 6 months building. I'm looking at this, and honestly, it looks like spaghetti. It's heavy. It's bloat. The room went quiet. The other 6 engineers, my team, stared at the table. They knew Node 7 wasn't bloat. Node 7 was a masterpiece of load balancing logic. It was the reason our platform could handle 10,000 concurrent requests without melting the servers into silicon slag. It was the engine. You don't look at a Ferrari engine and call it cluttered just because you don't know what a camshaft does. It's not bloat, Brad, I said, my voice steady. Adjusted my glasses. It's the latency reduction protocol. It bypasses the legacy SQL queries and routes directly through the cached memory layer. It improves throughput by 20%. If you remove it, the API response time jumps from 50 milliseconds to 3 seconds. Brad laughed. It was a wet, condescending sound. 3 seconds? Who cares? Users wait longer for their Uber. Look, I'm the CTO now. My dad put me here to streamline this company for the acquisition. Orion Technologies is looking for lean code, Kayla. Lean. He walked over to the dev console that was mirrored on the big screen. My stomach tightened. He had admin access. I had told the founder, Jerry, that giving Brad admin access was like giving a chimp a loaded handgun. But Jerry had just patted my shoulder and said, he needs to feel empowered, Kayla. We don't need this complex back-end voodoo, Brad announced, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. We need a clean main branch. Simple, elegant. Brad, I said, my voice dropping an octave, don't touch the repository. I'm cleaning house, he sneered. He highlighted the Node 7 directory, the entire module, the core logic for the upcoming merger data migration. Brad, if you delete that, the staging environment collapses, I warned, standing up. Since we have auto-deploy to production enabled for the demo tomorrow, you worry too much. That's your problem. You're an obstructionist, he said. And then, with a theatrical flourish that belonged in a bad Broadway play, he hit delete. Then commit, then push. The screen flickered. The terminal window scrolled green text for a second, then stopped. Done, he dusted his hands off. Leaner already. The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. My lead junior dev, a kid named Marcus who I'd trained from scratch, looked like he was about to vomit. He looked at me, his eyes wide, pleading for me to fix it. But I couldn't fix it. Not this time. You just deleted the logic layer, I said, sitting back down. I felt a strange calm wash over me. It was the calm of a demolition expert watching the charges go off exactly as planned, even if they were set by an idiot. Application is now a front-end shell. It can't fetch data. It can't authenticate users. It's a zombie. Brad turned to me, his face reddening. See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Negativity. You're toxic, Kayla. You're not a culture fit for the new Streamline. He puffed out his chest. You're fired. Get your stuff. I want you out before the sprint review is over. The room gasped. Marcus actually stood up. Brad, you can't. Sit down, Marcus. Brad barked. Or you're next. I looked at Brad. I looked at the screen where my code used to be. I looked at my team, who looked terrified. And then my phone buzzed on the table. It had been buzzing for weeks. A blocked number. I knew who it was. I had ignored it because I was loyal. I was loyal to Jerry, the founder who gave me a shot 5 years ago. I was loyal to the code. I was loyal to the team. I picked up the phone. The screen lit up. You know, usually, people tell you to ignore the red flags, just like you ignore that notification bell. But if you're enjoying watching a nepotism hire implode a multimillion-dollar company in real time, maybe do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and the like. It helps the algorithm find more people who appreciate a good corporate disaster. And honestly, it motivates me to type this out instead of drinking a bottle of wine. Okay, back to the carnage. I looked at the caller ID. It wasn't blocked this time, it just said Orion. Brad was still talking, rambling about fresh perspectives and rockstar ninjas. He thought he had crushed me. He thought he had won. He was watching me, waiting for the tears, for the begging, for the pleas, I need this job. I swiped right. I put the phone to my ear. This is Kayla, I said. The voice on the other end was smooth, professional. It was Elias Thorne, VP of Engineering at Orion Technologies, the very company that was supposed to buy Streamline for $350 million next week. Kayla, Elias said, we haven't heard back from you regarding the offer. We're finalizing our due diligence on Streamline tomorrow. Honestly, looking at their architecture docs, you're the only reason we're still interested. The rest of it looks like, well, a mess. I looked at Brad. He was smirking, arms crossed. Yes, I said into the phone, my voice clear enough for everyone in the room to hear. I accept Orion's offer. Brad's smirk faltered. Who is that? I can start immediately, I continued, ignoring Brad. Actually, I'm free right now. My schedule just cleared up unexpectedly. Elias paused on the line. Oh, that's fast. Everything okay on your end? Everything is perfect, I said, locking eyes with the founder's son. I'll see you in an hour. I hung up. I closed my MacBook. I stood up and unplugged my charger. The winding sound of the cord retracting was the only noise in the room. Good luck with the deploy, Brad, I said. I walked toward the door. I didn't look back at the screen. I didn't look back at my team. I walked out of the conference room, my heels clicking on the polished concrete floor, leaving behind 5 years of my life and a system that was currently bleeding out into the digital void. Brad shouted something after me, something about insubordination and security escort, but I barely heard him. I was already doing the math in my head. Node 7 handled the authentication tokens. Without it, the admin panel would lock out everyone, including Brad, within 50 minutes when the cache expired. He didn't just fire me. He just locked himself inside a burning building and threw away the key. The walk from the conference room to my desk was less than 50 feet. It felt like crossing a border between two warring nations. The open plan office of Streamline hummed with the usual mid-afternoon energy. Sales guys were ringing gongs, marketing was arguing about font kerning, and the espresso machine in the break room was screaming. None of them knew that the company was already dead. They were walking around on a corpse that hadn't started to smell yet. I reached my desk, a standing desk setup with 3 vertical monitors, mechanical keyboard that sounded like rain on a tin roof, and a single succulent that I had somehow kept alive for 4 years. I grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet. It was a happy onboarding box that was meant for new hires. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. I didn't take much. My personalized keycaps, my noise-canceling headphones, a framed photo of my cat, Pseudo. I left the company hoodie. I left the branded water bottle. I left the year 5 plaque they had given me last week, which was made of cheap acrylic and already scratched. Kayla, I turned. It was Greg, the lead sysadmin. Greg was a man who looked like he lived in a server rack, pale, vibrating with caffeine, and wearing a t-shirt that said there is no place like 127.0.0.1. He was the only person in the building who understood the infrastructure as well as I did, mostly because he had to wake up at 3 a.m. when things broke. Is it true? Greg whispered, looking over his shoulder toward the glass-walled conference room where Brad was still gesticulating wildly at the whiteboard. Did he actually? Did he RF the optimization module? He didn't use the command line, Greg, I said, dropping my stapler into the box. He used the GUI. He clicked delete and then confirmed it. He thinks he's leaning out the code. Greg's face lost what little color it had. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. But the API gateway, the load balancers rely on Node 7 to route traffic. If that module is gone, the health checks will fail in about. I glanced at my Apple Watch. 9 minutes. Then the autoscaler will try to spin up new instances to compensate for the failed ones. But since the base image pulls from the main branch, the one Brad just committed to, new instances will spin up broken. It's going to be a loop, Greg horrified, infinite crash loop. AWS is going to bill us for thousands of instances spinning up and dying every second. Yep, I said, popping a stress ball into my box. I have to stop the deploy, Greg said, reaching for his phone. Don't, I said. My voice was sharp, cutting through his panic. He stopped. What? He fired me, Greg, explicitly, for obstruction. If you intervene now, you're undermining the CTO. You're obstructing his vision. I leaned in close. Brad has admin access. If you try to roll back, he'll see it. He'll fire you too, and you have a mortgage and twins on the way. Greg swallowed hard. He looked at the server status dashboard on the big screen on the wall. All the lights were green. Green, green, green. It was the calm before the red storm, so we just let it burn. It's already burning, Greg, just waiting for the smoke detectors to notice. I picked up my box. Do me a favor. Don't fix it, not tonight. Let him see what lean looks like. Greg looked at me with a mixture of terror and awe. He nodded slowly. I didn't see you. I was in the bathroom. Good man. I walked toward the elevator. The office felt surreal. I saw the head of sales high-fiving a junior rep. Just closed the deal of the quarter, he shouted. I almost felt bad for him. Commission check was never going to clear. The company's valuation was tied to the technology, and the technology was currently eating itself. As I waited for the elevator, my phone buzzed again. A Slack notification. I hadn't been revoked yet. It was from Marcus, the junior dev in the conference room. Marcus, he's trying to run the build manually. It's throwing error 503s. He's yelling at the compiler. I didn't reply. I just deleted the app from my phone. Elevator doors opened. I stepped in. As the doors closed, I saw Brad storming out of the conference room, his face a mask of confusion. He was holding his laptop like a shield. He looked around the room, perhaps looking for me, perhaps looking for anyone to blame. Our eyes met through the narrowing gap of the steel doors. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just stood there, holding my box of personal effects, watching him realize that he was alone. The doors shut. The whoosh of the descending car was the most peaceful sound I had heard in 5 years. I walked out of the building and into the gray Seattle drizzle. The air was cold and wet. I took a deep breath. It smelled like rain and exhaust, not stale coffee and fear. I hailed a lift. Where to? The driver asked. Do you know the Orion Technologies building in South Lake Union? I asked. The big glass one? Yeah, take me there. I leaned my head against the cool window. My phone buzzed again. This time, an email notification. Access revoked. Your Google Workspace account for Streamline has been suspended. I smiled. He was quick with the admin panel when he was panicked. But he was too late. I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was the competition. And I was on my way to sell the only thing that mattered, the blueprint in my head. Orion Technologies didn't have an open plan office. They had architecture. Lobby was a cathedral of glass and steel, with a waterfall cascading down one wall that probably cost more than Streamline's entire series of funding. I walked to the reception desk, my happy onboarding box tucked under my arm like a nuclear football. Kayla for Elias Thorne, I told the receptionist. She didn't ask for ID. She didn't check a list. She just pressed a button under the desk. He's expecting you in the Sky Lounge, 40th floor. Elevator ride was smooth, silent, and fast. My ears popped. When the doors opened, Elias Thorne was waiting. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing dark selvage denim and a black cashmere sweater. He looked like a man who wrote code in the morning and negotiated acquisitions in the afternoon. Kayla, he said, extending a hand. I didn't expect you to be quite so prompt. I believe in efficient routing, I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm. My previous route had a blockage. He chuckled and gestured to a seating area overlooking Lake Union. The view was expensive. You could see the seaplanes landing, cutting white scars across the dark water. Coffee, tea, whiskey, sparkling water, I said. I need a clear head. We sat. I put my box on the floor. So Elias started, leaning back. Let's cut the corporate dance. We've been trying to buy Streamline for 6 months. Due diligence reports kept coming back with red flags on their front-end code, their sales projections, their user retention. But every time our engineers dug into the backend, the API latency, the database structure, the encryption protocols, it was pristine. He looked at me intently. It was you. It was me, I confirmed. And my team. But mostly the architecture I built 3 years ago to handle the scalability issues the founders ignored. Now you're here, Elias said, and you said you were free. Brad, the founder's son, decided to lean out the code base about an hour ago, I said, taking a sip of the San Pellegrino that had materialized on the table. He deleted the Note 7 logic module. In production. Elias's eyebrows shot up. He deleted the optimization layer, The thing that makes the platform actually work. Gone. And he fired me for trying to stop him. Elias let out a low whistle. Didn't look horrified, he looked calculating. He looked like a shark that just smelled blood in the water. So, he said slowly, if we were to complete the acquisition of Streamline tomorrow, we'd be buying a shell. You'd be buying a front-end interface that points to 404 errors, I corrected. The data is there technically, but the engine to access it, that's gone. And I'm the only one who knows how to rebuild it quickly. The documentation was, well, Brad didn't like documentation. He called it bloat. Elias smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. Kayla, I'm going to be honest. We don't want Streamline. We don't care about their brand. We don't care about their logistics app. We wanted the engine. We wanted the underlying tech to power our new fintech vertical. We were going to scrap the rest. He pulled a tablet from his bag and slid it across the table. This is Project Vessel, he said. It's what we wanted Streamline's tech for. But since the tech is currently imploding, why don't we just build it from scratch? With the architect who designed it in the first place, I looked at the tablet. It was a schematic for a high-frequency trading platform. It needed speed. It needed security. It needed exactly what I had spent 5 years building for a logistics company that sold boxes. You want me to rebuild it, I said. Better. I want you to be the head of architecture for Project Vessel, Elias said, equity partner. 3 times your Streamline salary, a team of your choosing, and full autonomy. No founder's sons. I looked at the schematic. I could see the code in my head already. I could see the database schema. I could see where I would improve on my old design. No legacy debt. No quick fixes for sales demos. A clean slate. And what happens to the Streamline deal? I asked. Elias tapped the table. We have a clause in the letter of intent. Material adverse change. If the technology is significantly degraded during the diligence period, we can walk away without penalty. He looked at me. Would you say the technology is significantly degraded? I thought about the red error logs that were currently flooding the monitors of my former team. I thought about Greg sweating in the server room. I thought of Brad screaming at command line he didn't understand. Elias, I said, a cold smile touching my lips. I'd say the technology is non-existent. Then we walk, Elias said, and we build Vessel. I have one condition, I said, name it. I want to hire 3 people from Streamline once the dust settles. My junior dev, Marcus, Greg, the sysadmin, and Sarah from QA. Done, Elias said. He extended his hand again. Welcome to Orion, Kayla. I shook it. As I did, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I ignored it. I knew what it was. The crash loop had started. The infinite billing was racking up. The fires were burning. And for the first time in 5 years, I didn't have to grab a fire extinguisher. I just ordered another sparkling water. The first week at Orion was like stepping out of a noisy nightclub into a quiet library. No one screamed. No one threw buzzwords around like confetti. There were stand-up meetings, but they actually lasted 15 minutes. Code reviews were brutal, but they were about the code, not the ego. I sat in my new office, an actual office with a door, migrating my mental blueprints into Orion's secure repositories. We were building Vessel on a Rust-based stack, something I had begged Streamline to transition to for years. Here, it was just approved. Resource request approved, the email said. 3 words. Took me 5 minutes to get approval for a server cluster that would have taken 3 months of begging at my old job. Meanwhile, my phone was a digital window into hell. I hadn't blocked Marcus or Greg. I needed to know they were okay, and honestly, a small, dark part of me needed to know how bad it was. Tuesday, 11:42 p.m. Marcus. The autoscaler hit $15K in overages today. Brad is screaming that AWS is scamming us. He tried to edit the config file in Notepad. Notepad, Kayla. He corrupted the encoding. Wednesday, 3:15 a.m. Greg. I haven't slept in 40 hours. Every time we patch the routing table, the front end throws cores errors. Brad keeps asking why we can't just Control-Z the server state. I think he's crying in his office. I sat in my ergonomic chair, sipping loose-leaf tea, reading these messages with a detachment that surprised me. I typed back to Greg, Kayla, check the Nginx config. He probably overwrote the headers when he pushed the clean branch. And Greg, go home. Let it crash. Greg, I can't. The demo with Orion is on Friday. If we don't have it running, Jerry is going to have a stroke. Ah, the demo, the famous demo. I walked out to the Orion coffee bar. Elias was there, reading a report on his iPad. He looked up and nodded. How's the build? He asked. API skeleton is up, I said. Latency is sub 10 ms. It's beautiful. Good, he said. Then he smirked. We're still scheduled for the final acquisition demo with Streamline on Friday. The founder, Jerry, called me, assured me that the glitch earlier this week was just a system upgrade, and they are now more optimized than ever. Is that so? I stirred my tea. He says his CTO has personally overseen the rebuild, Elias said, able to suppress a laugh. He says it's running smooth as butter. I assume you're sending a team to verify. I'm sending the VP of product and our lead legal counsel, Elias said. And I was wondering if you wanted to join via video link, off camera, of course. To consult. I thought about it. I thought about seeing Brad's face when the system inevitably failed. But then I shook my head. No, I said. I don't need to see it. I know exactly what's going to happen. It's a deterministic system, Elias. Input garbage, output garbage, fair enough. I went back to my desk. I pulled up the vessel architecture. It was elegant. It was robust. It was mine. But later that night, I got a text from Sarah in QA. Thursday, 9:00 p.m. Sarah, they are hard-coding the data, Kayla. They couldn't fix the backend logic, so for the demo, they are just making the front-end display static JSON files. It's a Potemkin village. If Orion clicks on anything other than the happy path, the whole thing 404s. I stared at the screen, hard-coding the data. It was the oldest trick in the Vaporware book. It was fraud. I forwarded the text to Elias with a simple caption. Ask them to filter by date range, last year during the demo. The static file only covers the current month. Elias replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I leaned back in my chair. The sun was setting over the Olympic Mountains. I felt a strange sense of peace. I wasn't the one holding the duct tape anymore. I was the one holding the scalpel. Friday morning arrived with the heavy gray gloom typical of the Pacific Northwest. At Streamline, I knew the mood would be frantic manic energy. At Orion, it was just another Friday. Bagel day. I was in a code sprint with my new team, 2 senior devs I had handpicked from Orion's internal pool. We were building the authentication microservice. It was quiet, focused work. But my second monitor had a terminal window open, not to a server, but to a group chat with Marcus, Greg, and Sarah. I had named the chat Lifeboat. 10:00 a.m. Sarah, the Orion team is here. Suits, lawyers, they look serious. Brad is sweating through his blazer. He smells like Axe body spray and desperation. 10:05 a.m. Greg, Jerry is doing the intro, talking about resilience and next-gen pivots. Ad is setting up the projector. His hands are shaking so bad he can't plug in the HDMI. I imagine the conference room, the same one where I was fired, the ghosts of my code still haunting the projector screen. 10:15 a.m. Marcus, demo starting. Brad is driving. He's clicking through the dashboard. Look how fast it loads. Yeah, because it's loading a local CSV file, you moron. I took a bite of my poppy seed bagel. Elias was in that room. Had my note. 10:20 a.m. Sarah. Okay, Orion guy, the VP just asked a question. Can we see the logistics throughput for Q3 of last year? 10:21 a.m. Greg, Brad froze. He's saying, well, we focus on real-time data, so historicals are archived for latency purposes. 10:22 a.m. Sarah. Orion guy isn't buying it. Unarchive it, please. We need to verify the database integrity. This was the kill shot. Database wasn't connected. There was nothing to unarchive. The archive was a lie to cover the fact that the API was dead. 10:25 a.m. Marcus. Brad is typing. He's trying to inspect Element to change the dates on the fly. Oh my God. He's typing into the browser console in front of them. 10:26 a.m. Greg, error 500. Massive red box on the screen. Undefined is not a function. I chuckled. Undefined is not a function. Epitaph of the incompetent coder. 10:28 a.m. Sarah. Brad is shouting at the screen. It's the Wi-Fi. The Orion guest network is throttling us. 10:29 a.m. Marcus. The Orion lawyer just stood up. Mr. Founder, this application isn't making network requests. We're monitoring the traffic. This is a static page. There is no backend connected. I could feel the air leave the room from 10 miles away. The fraud was exposed. It wasn't just a bug anymore. We're trying to sell a car with a cardboard engine. 10:35 a.m. Greg, it's over. The Orion team just packed up. Didn't even say goodbye, just we'll be in touch. Jerry looks like he's having a cardiac event. Brad is staring at the wall. 10:40 a.m. Marcus, Jerry just turned to Brad. Where's the backup? Where's Kayla's code? 10:41 a.m. Marcus. Brad said, I told you, Dad. I leaned it out. 10:42 a.m. Marcus. Jerry is screaming. I've never heard him scream. I think he just fired Brad or killed him. It's hard to tell. I closed the chat window. I didn't need to read any more. The acquisition was dead. The $350 million deal had evaporated in 45 minutes because a nepotism hire thought he could outsmart the fundamentals of software engineering. Elias walked into my office an hour later. He looked calm. There was a hardness in his eyes. "You were right," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Total fabrication. They tried to spoof the data." "I told you," I said. "What happens now? We issued a formal withdrawal of the LOI," Elias said, "and our legal team is drafting a notice regarding breach of good faith. They wasted our time, Kayla, and time is expensive." "What about the tech?" I asked. "The IP? Worthless," Elias said. "Without the logic layer you built. It's just spaghetti code and a nice UI. We're not buying it. We're building Vessel." He paused, then smiled. "By the way, their founder, Jerry, he asked about you. As we were leaving, he asked if we knew where you went. He said there was a misunderstanding regarding your employment." "What did you say?" I said I had no idea. Elias lied smoothly. "I told him good talent is hard to find." "That was kind of you. We protect our assets, Kayla. And right now, the most valuable asset we have." I turned back to my screen. The Vessel code was compiling. No errors, no warnings, just clean, efficient execution. "Back to work," I said. 2 weeks later, the silence from Streamline was deafening. Usually when a deal falls through, there's a press release, a spin about strategic misalignment or market conditions. But there was nothing, just radio silence. At Orion, Project Vessel was hitting every milestone. My team was a machine. We were moving so fast that Elias had to hire 2 more project managers just to keep track of our velocity. I was working hard, but I wasn't exhausted. I went home at 6 p.m. I cooked dinner. I actually read books that weren't O'Reilly technical manuals. I was at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill on a rainy Saturday, reading a novel when I saw him. It was Marcus, my former junior dev. He looked 10 years older, had dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. He was staring at a laptop screen, frantically typing. "Marcus," I said, approaching his table. He jumped, nearly knocking over his latte. When he saw me, his shoulders slumped. "Kayla, oh God, hi, you look terrible," I said, sitting down opposite him. "I haven't slept in 3 days," he rubbed his face. "It's a nightmare, Kayla, a literal nightmare." "What's happening?" "Investors are pulling out," he whispered. "VC firm that led the Series B. They found out about the demo. They found out about the fake front end. They're auditing everything. They froze the bank accounts. And Brad, gone. Jerry fired him effectively immediately after the demo. But the damage is done. We can't restore the old code because the backups were on a rotation that. Well, Brad canceled the S3 bucket subscription to save money 2 weeks before he fired you." I closed my eyes, deleted the backups. "He thought they were redundant," Marcus said, his voice cracking. "So we have nothing. We're trying to reverse engineer your logic from compiled binaries, but it's impossible. It's like trying to unbake a cake." "You can't," I said softly. "The obfuscation protocols I installed would make that take years." "I know," Marcus said. "We're patching things with duct tape. We're hard-coding customer requests manually. Like when a big client wants a report, have to go into the SQL database, run a query, export it to Excel, and email it to them pretending it came from the system. We're human API." He looked at me with pleading eyes. "Kayla, Jerry is desperate. He's been asking everyone if they've heard from you. He says he'll offer you double, triple, equity, anything." I looked at Marcus. I felt a pang of sympathy for him. He was a good kid. He didn't deserve this. "Marcus," I said, "I can't go back. Know that? The bridge isn't just burned, it's nuked." "I know," he sighed. But I slid a business card across the table. It wasn't my card. It was for Orion's HR department. "We're hiring for the Vessel team. I need a front-end lead who knows how to deal with high-pressure environments." Marcus stared at the card. "Orion, but they hate us." "They hate Streamline," I corrected. "They love competent engineers who were held hostage by idiots." Apply. Use me as a reference. Marcus looked like I had just handed him a winning lottery ticket. "Are you serious? I already cleared it with Elias." "Same goes for Greg and Sarah." "Get out, Marcus. The ship is sinking. Stop bailing water." He pocketed the card. "I'll apply tonight." "Thank you, Kayla, seriously. Just don't use Brad as a reference," I joked. "Who?" Marcus cracked a grim smile. I walked home feeling lighter. The collapse of Streamline wasn't my fault. It was a tragedy of arrogance. But I could save the people who actually did the work. That evening, I got an alert on my phone. A Google News notification for Streamline Logistics. Headline: Streamline Logistics CTO ousted amidst acquisition collapse. Investors allege technical malpractice. I poured myself a glass of wine and clicked the link. The article detailed the disastrous demo. It mentioned internal sources describing a toxic culture of nepotism. Didn't mention me by name. I was just the former lead engineer whose departure precipitated the crisis. I was the ghost in the machine, and the machine was finally breaking down. But the real twist was yet to come. I didn't know it yet, but Jerry wasn't done. He was about to try one last, desperate Hail Mary that would bring him right to my doorstep. The legal courier arrived at Orion on a Tuesday. He looked out of place in the sleek glass lobby, holding a thick manila envelope. He wasn't delivering lunch. He was delivering a war declaration. Elias called me into his office. The envelope was open on his desk. "We've been served," Elias said, his face unreadable. "Who?" I asked, sitting down. "Streamline Logistics, or rather, their remaining legal counsel before they quit." Elias slid a document toward me, suing Orion for predatory hiring practices and accusing you specifically of intellectual property sabotage and planting of malicious code. I picked up the document. The legalese was dense, but the accusation was clear. Jerry was claiming that I had intentionally booby-trapped the code before I left, causing the system to fail during the demo. He was claiming Node 7 was a logic bomb. "This is insane," I said, tossing the paper back. "I didn't plant a bomb, built the load-bearing walls." Brad knocked them down with a sledgehammer. "The collapse wasn't sabotage, it was gravity." "I know that," Elias said calmly. "And our forensic audit of the Git logs, which we can subpoena, will prove that." Brad's commit history is a smoking gun. But Jerry is desperate. He's trying to freeze our development of Vessel. He thinks if he ties us up in court, he can force a settlement or get us to buy his scraps. "So what do? We don't settle," Elias said, his eyes hardening. "We invite them over. Excuse me? We're holding a deposition here tomorrow. We're going to let Jerry say these things under oath, and then you're going to walk into the room." I felt a cold shiver of anticipation. "He doesn't know I'm the head of Vessel. He knows you're here. He doesn't know you're the architect of the thing that's about to put him out of business. He thinks you're just a disgruntled employee we picked up for cheap." The next morning, Orion conference room was set up like a tribunal. On one side, Orion's legal team, sharks in Italian suits. On the other, Jerry and a very tired-looking lawyer who looked like he was working on a contingency fee. I watched from the adjacent room via the one-way mirror. It was a classic interrogation setup. Jerry looked terrible. He had lost weight. His hair was disheveled. He was pounding the table. "She destroyed it," Jerry shouted. "System worked perfectly for 5 years. She leaves and suddenly it collapses. That's not a coincidence, that's sabotage. She deleted the keys," Mr. Founder, Orion's lawyer, said smoothly. "Our records indicate that a user named Brad Admin initiated a deletion of the Node 7 directory at 2:14 p.m. on the day in question." "Are you familiar with this user?" Jerry sputtered. Brad was optimizing. He was cleaning up her mess, but she left. Traps, dependencies that were undocumented. Undocumented dependencies? The lawyer asked, or simply, the code itself. "It's the same thing," Jerry yelled. "She made herself indispensable on purpose. That's extortion." "No, Mr. Founder," the lawyer said. "That's engineering." Elias signaled to me it was time. I opened the door and walked into the conference room. The silence was instant. Jerry stopped mid-shout. His eyes locked onto me. I wasn't wearing my old hoodie and jeans. I was wearing a tailored blazer. I looked like money. I looked like power. "Hello, Jerry," I said, taking the empty seat next to Elias. "You," Jerry pointed a shaking finger at me. "You ruined my company." "I built your company," I said, my voice ice cold, "for 5 years. I kept it running while you spent your series on office furniture and your son's salary. I warned you about giving him admin access. I documented every risk. You signed off on it." I slid a folder across the table. "These are the logs," I said. "Every keystroke, every commit." Brad didn't just delete the module, Jerry. He tried to replace it with code he copied from a Stack Overflow thread from 2015. Code that was incompatible with your library versions. He didn't just break the car, he poured sugar in the gas tank. Jerry looked at the logs. He didn't understand them, but he understood the confidence in my voice. "We are countersuing," Elias announced, "for defamation. And for frivolous litigation intended to impede our business. Unless," Jerry looked up, "unless what? Unless you drop this lawsuit immediately, admit publicly that the failure was due to internal mismanagement, and," Elias paused, smiling, "release Marcus, Greg, and Sarah from their non-compete clauses effective immediately." Jerry looked at his lawyer. The lawyer shook his head. It's over, the sheikh said. Jerry slumped in his chair. He looked small. Bluster was gone. The denial was gone. All that was left was the math. And the math didn't work. Fine, Jerry whispered. Good, I said, and Jerry, one more thing. He looked at me, eyes hollow. Next time you fire the architect, I said, make sure you know where the load-bearing walls are. 3 months later, Project Vessel went live. It wasn't a noisy launch. There was no confetti. There were no press releases full of buzzwords. Just a switch flip at 2:00 a.m. I stood in the Orion Command Center, a room that looked like NASA Mission Control, surrounded by my team. Marcus was monitoring the front-end analytics. Greg was watching the server load. Sarah was tracking the error logs. Traffic is spiking, Marcus said, grinning. We just onboarded the Global Freight Partners account. Global Freight Partners. Streamline's biggest former client had defected to us a week after Streamline filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Latency? I asked. 12 milliseconds, Greg reported. Stable. The load balancers are yawning. They're barely breaking a sweat. I watched the data flow on the main screen. It was beautiful. Streams of gold light moving across a dark map of the world. Each stream was a transaction, a shipment, a confirmation. It was the system I had always wanted to build, running on hardware that could actually support it. No errors, Sarah said. 0. It's clean, Kayla. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 5 years. Good work, team, I said. Let's order pizza. The celebration was low-key. We ate pizza and drank craft beer in the lounge. The vibe was different here. There was no fear. We knew the system worked because we built it right. Around 4 a.m., Elias walked in. He was holding a bottle of champagne. Congratulations, he said, popping the cork. The board is ecstatic. The stock is up 4% in after hours, trading just on the rumor of the launch. He poured me a glass. You know, we got a call today. Oh, from the receivership handling Streamline's assets, Elias said. They're auctioning off the IP. The domain name, the customer list, the legacy code. How much? I asked. Pennies. Nobody wants the code. It's tainted. But the customer list, we already have most of them. Elias laughed. It's worthless, Kayla, the whole thing. It's a cautionary tale. I took a sip of champagne. It tasted like victory. What about Jerry? I asked. And Brad? Brad is pursuing other opportunities. Elias made air quotes. I heard he's trying to pivot into crypto or AI art, something where you don't need to know how things work. Jerry retired, forced retirement. He lost everything. The house, the boat. Investors sued him for breach of fiduciary duty. It was a grim fate, but I couldn't find it in myself to be sad. They had treated people like disposable cogs. They had treated code like magic that just happens. They refused to respect the craft. Marcus, I called out. Yeah, boss. He had a slice of pepperoni in one hand and a tablet in the other. How's the import script coming? Done, Marcus said. Can migrate any remaining Streamline customers to Vessel in under an hour. Their data formats are? Well, I know them by heart. Good, I said. Turn it on. We weren't just winning, we were absorbing. We were the bigger organism. As the sun came up over Seattle, painting the Space Needle in pink and orange, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage that had fueled me during the firing, the cold fury during the deposition, it was gone. It was just a builder, and I had built something that lasted. My phone buzzed. It wasn't a text. It was a LinkedIn notification. Brad has viewed your profile. I smiled. I didn't view his back. I didn't block him. I just let it sit there. Let him see the title, VP of Engineering, Orion Technologies. Let him see the success. Let him see what he deleted. I put my phone down and turned back to the screen. Greg, I said, let's run a stress test. I want to see if we can handle double the load. You got it, Kayla. The work continued. The code compiled. The world kept turning. The final act of the Streamline tragedy didn't happen in a courtroom or a boardroom. It happened in an email. 6 months post-collapse, the liquidation firm handling Streamline's cadaver reached out to Orion. They weren't trying to sell us anything anymore. They were asking for help. Subject, urgent decryption request/legacy database. I sat in my corner office, reading the email on my 32-inch monitor. The liquidators were trying to extract historical data to satisfy a tax audit for the failed company. But they couldn't access the archives. The backups, the ones Brad hadn't deleted, were encrypted, and the private key used to encrypt them lived in a secure vault that required two-factor authentication. The two factors were: 1. CTO's authorization, Brad, whose access was revoked. 2. The lead engineer's authorization, me. They were locked out of their own history. Elias stood by my desk. You don't have to help them, you know. Legally, you have no obligation. They fired you. I know, I said, but there are customer records in there. Innocent businesses who need their tax documents. It's not their fault Brad was an idiot. So you're going to unlock it. I'm going to go there, I said. One last time, I drove to the old office. The building looked the same, but the logo was gone from the glass doors. Inside, it was a ghost town. Desks were piled in the corner. Monitors were stacked like dominoes. The silence was heavy. A stressed-out liquidation agent named Steve met me. He looked like he hated his life. Thank you for coming, Steve said. We've been trying to crack this for weeks. We called the guy, Brad. He said he didn't know the password. Said password 123 didn't work. It wouldn't, I said dryly. I walked to what used to be my desk. It was empty. The dust outlines of my monitors were still visible. I sat down. It felt small. I pulled out my laptop and connected to the local server, which was running on emergency power. Okay, I typed into the terminal. SSH root at 192.168.1.5. I entered my old admin password. It still worked? Of course it did. Brad had never figured out how to change the root credentials. The screen filled with text. The encrypted volume appeared. Is that it? Steve asked, peering over my shoulder. That's the grave, I said. I pulled a USB drive from my pocket. It contained my GPG private key. The key I had generated 5 years ago to keep the data safe. I plugged it in. I typed the decryption command. GPG decrypt output manifest JSON. The progress bar spun. 10%, 50%, 100%. Access granted. The terminal read. Steve let out a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God, you're a lifesaver, Kayla. I'm just the janitor, I said, standing up, cleaning up the mess one last time. I looked around the office. I saw the ghost of Brad standing at the whiteboard, deleting my work. I saw the ghost of Jerry nodding along. I saw the ghost of myself, younger, more naive, thinking that if I just worked hard enough, I would be safe. I wasn't safe because I worked hard. I was safe because I was smart. As I walked toward the door, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. Hello, Kayla, it was Jerry. His voice was raspy, broken. Steve told me you were coming to open the files. I did it, Jerry. The auditors will get their data. Kayla, he sounded like he was crying. I realized something. Too late, that module. Node 7. It wasn't bloat, was it? I stopped with my hand on the glass door. No, Jerry, it wasn't bloat. It was the foundation, he whispered. I let him break the foundation. Yes, you did. I'm sorry, he said. I listened to the static on the line. I thought about saying something profound. I thought about rubbing it in. But I didn't need to. The empty office, the bankruptcy, the silence that was loud enough. Goodbye, Jerry, I said. Hung up. I walked out into the rain. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Marcus, vessel just hit 100K transactions per second. We need you to approve the cluster expansion. Also, we ordered Thai food. I smiled. I got into my car, a new Tesla, bought with my Orion signing bonus, and looked back at the empty building one last time. I thought about the delete button. I thought about how easy it is to destroy something you don't understand, and I thought about how hard it is to build it back up. I put the car in drive. Next time you delete something, make sure you know what it does. Because sometimes you're not just deleting code, you're deleting your future. I merged onto the highway, heading back to Orion, back to the builders, back to work.